Is the world weirding out today? My friend and colleague, it's weirding out. How's it weirding out?
The world?
The world is weirding out, you said.
Weirding out. That is taking an adjective and turning it into a present participle as a verb.
Does anybody care?
Well, I care. So yes, the answer to anybody, does anybody care? The answer is yes.
Well, would you start gripping reality, and then we'll have,
This is podcast number 8.
008.
No, 008. And the question is, after Sean Connery played James Bond as 007, the question then is, who was Agent 008?
They were Agents 008, 009. You watch those old ones, they used to talk to them all the time.
Anyway, so I didn't know who that was. I thought it was maybe somebody who was in a hurry and you're trying to reduce our level of hurry. And the guy who wrote that book said, oh, wait. And it wasn't really an 8. He was saying, oh, wait, which comes out exactly the same in English. If we translate this eventually into other languages, that joke will make no sense at all. Which is...
doesn't make any sense now. So why would it be any different?
Anyway, this is podcast 008. And we are introducing in the PEMB matrix the concepts of perceptions, emotions, motivations, and behavior, the complex of emotions.
Which really, in the scheme of all of these things that we're doing, is what started this whole adventure.
Yes. It really is, because emotions are hard for people to actually wrap their mind around, since it's a part of our experience of reality that doesn't necessarily come with words attached. I mean, that's one of the challenges that we face. We often think using words, and when something is occurring that we don't have language for, in much the way that a very young infant who hasn't developed any language skills at all can feel emotion. They can feel anger, they can feel joy, they can feel love, they can feel fear, but they don't have any words to describe or work with what they're experiencing inside their own bodies, their own minds, their own experience. So not having an understanding of how fear works, it's actually one of the very initial experiences that human beings absolutely require, they need in our hesitancy to use need should not must.
That word. Exactly.
We need to feel startle in the first split second of our life.
Right.
Because the response to startle is to suck in air and start crying or to breathe out. And so in order for a human being to start breathing, their bodies go from the warmth of the womb out through the birth canal, drop into gravity, which they've never really experienced before, and cold air, no matter how warm it is, and they suck in, the startle makes them do that, and they start breathing. That's actually kicks it off. So startle, but they don't have any words for that. So the challenge that we came up with was how to help people whose lives have become entangled. It's extremely difficult. It's down to the very brutal side of life, or the effervescent and lovely and joyous, and there's just no words to really work through some of the things that are complex and not working really well. I think that's really where this started.
And where we are right now as a culture in 2020, excuse me, we're all looking forward to 2021. This whole aspect of emotions is probably for the first time, I would say, and I don't know, you would probably agree with this, but I think from a standpoint of mental health and emotional ability and all those kinds of issues that are out there, there's probably more discussion about this issue than there has been for a long time as a nation, corporately, because we are dealing with many dynamics that now are pushed right on top of the table. And what we teach and what's important for you to understand as we talk about this, folks, is that when we talk about emotions, the thing that we want to begin with, the platform where we want to begin, is that emotions are neutral in of themselves. They're not positive, they're not negative, they are neutral. The issue begins in that dynamic of what you do with that. So back to this very same question, the core and the key questions we ask all the time, and we'll continue to ask, and you'll probably get tired of us asking it.
No, they'll never get tired of us asking. These are two
so?
vital questions because they change with every circumstance.
That's
the first
true.
question is, what is it doing to you? That's really the first, right. So anger, love,
right.
fear, whatever the situation is, what does that do to me?
Right.
First question.
Second question is, what am I going to do about it?
What do I do with that? Mm-hmm.
What I do with that, fear, anger, depression,
joy,
love, joy, whatever it is, celebration, whatever that is, what do I do with that? What does it do to me? What am I to do with that? Those two questions are key. But to start at a baseline in your mind of these are neutral in of themselves. You'll read, and it's not, we're not here to throw anyone under the bus or to make a big deal out of this, but you will read many times, if you will, self-help type books that will talk about anger, that anger is a negative emotion. And we're going, no, it's not. It's a neutral emotion.
Right. People go to anger management seminars because they feel like, as opposed to anger enhancement seminars.
Right.
Maybe that's what we should start, is an anger stimulus program.
Well, I think actually what we ought to do is get to the really the other side, and here's a real dialogue one for you, is that maybe we should get to fear that drives anger. Is a response to anger.
Could be.
So maybe.
But you're using terms that we haven't even explained yet.
I know, and that's what's so fun about this podcast, because now it's totally confusion. You know, and
okay.
They're like, what in the world are you talking about? So let's.
So what we call this a complex, the complex of emotions. How did we come up with the word complex to describe the grouping of ideas or the assembly of these concepts in order to teach them so people could get a handle on it? Why do we pick the word complex?
Because there's complexity in all of this in how it works, and it doesn't work in its singular form. In other words, you don't have this emotion, this emotion, this emotion, this emotion. There's complexity that intersects. In the PEMB, perceptions, emotions, motivations, and behaviors, it's the complexity that comes together with all of those of interaction with each other that takes us to that centerpiece. And what we, in the book we do with Why Do People Act That Way, by gripping reality is that center intersection of, if you will, the Venn diagram, the complexity of those things working together. It's not this one stands alone and this one stands alone and this one stands alone. But in emotions, we have this incredibly complex dynamic that happens across the range of emotions, from low to high, from, if you will, from acceptance to celebration to depletion, empowerment, exposure. Where's the definitions we use? But to understand that, we felt it was really important that we built that mindset to start with, that this is not a simplistic type of interaction that takes place. These are complex, complex, and there's complexity in this.
Now, this is interesting because I know you're going to pick at me because
You're right, I
I'm
am gonna
being
pick at you.
too myopic,
You
too
are.
focused.
I already tell you
However,
this. I can tell you
however,
this.
your accent on the second syllable
Oh, God,
changes the meaning.
Here we go. Okay.
Okay, let me back up and explain. It's not the word syllable, it's syllable. But when you say that these are complex,
Yes.
as opposed to complex.
Right.
Now, here's how I think about it. And you're right. You're absolutely right. It is complex, meaning it's not a simplistic down to, oh, just give me a word or two and I'll completely understand it. It's complex. In my mind, the word complex means it is a facility with multiple rooms, multiple hallways, multiple purposes, and even multiple levels. When you walk into a room facility, and the building is essentially an entryway, place to hang up your coats or whatever, and then one big room. You would not call that a complex. That's just simply a room, a store, a building.
Right. Exactly.
But when you walk into a place and now there's a central starting point with a Wayfinder information, how you go down hallway A, hallway B, over to building 3, up to a new level, and there's all kinds of facets to this facility as opposed to what seems apparent when you first walk in. We call that a building complex. And so the idea in the perceptions, emotions, motivations, behaviors, we call them a complex in that sense. We're going to introduce a basic map, a building description. And then finding your way into those locations and how they're populated by the various individuals who are in control of them, that really becomes interesting. I mean, that's really what psychology and sociology and anthropology and every other ology out there really seeks to do, is to describe within this vast complex how it's situated, how it's populated, how it's used. If it's damaged, was it structurally strong enough to hold up what was going on? All those kinds of questions pertain. That's deep level learning stuff. So what we're doing in this podcast is introducing kind of an initial idea. We're going to do some descriptions about this complex or this complex concept so that people have something to work with. Now, they're already getting bored, and the guy who forgot sugar for his coffee is put in 6, which means he's too wired to actually sit and listen to this entire thing. But come back and listen to it again later. You'll get more out of it. But let's go.
Or just have another Red Bull and you'll be fine.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're not advertising any particular energy drink.
No, we're not. Oh,
till they become a sponsor and start paying us.
Oh, there you go. Okay, we can do that. So let's talk about the five complexes, the 5 emotions. Let's talk about those things. Okay.
I use the word system within the complex, and one of the challenges is, have we used consistent language all the way through so that people can actually not jump metaphors? So we didn't call them rooms, and we didn't call them building A and building B. We didn't do that. We call them
systems.
It's a complex, and then the emotional system.
And
the there are 5 emotional systems. And I came up with this after about 25 years of working with people, because the approach as I found it, not saying it doesn't work for other people, but the concept of clinical psychology tended to use emotion as a means to put a client or a counselee or an individual experiencing symptoms of some kind into a predefined box. And then treatments were recommended that dealt with that box. So the person became the box. We were talking about anger before. Anger management situations. Now you have borderline personality disorder because of anger and fear and these other various things going on. So now we've put you in a box. We know how to treat the box. And so we'll try our recommended therapies and see if they work. If your anger declines or it's redirected or it's resolved or it actually gets worse, then we evaluate our attempts at a solution, our therapies, and see if they worked or they didn't work. Could be medication, could be counseling therapy, talk therapy, could be behavior modification, all those kind of things. That was parapsychology. I found when I was actually talking to real people from age 5 or 4 or 3 who were just getting language in their brain to be able to talk, all the way to people in their 70s, 80s, 90s who were experiencing real challenges. I'm not even necessarily going to call it distress, but they were really facing some challenges they could not unravel emotionally. They did not want to be termed with a designation stuck in a box and have me start treating a box. They just want to talk about what they feel.
Right.
And one of the issues was they didn't know what they felt. They didn't know how to even describe it.
Right.
So that's really the genesis of this whole concept, was real people just talking over what they felt, what they thought, words they used. People weren't precise. They weren't accurate.
Right.
Sometimes they'd use the word and they'd say, oh, I don't mean that. And there had to be enough grace to say, yeah, but you said it. Freudian slip. Aha, I know. I said, okay, if that wasn't the right word, what is the right word? Well, we'd fish around for a little bit. We'd kind of maneuver. We'd wander till we try and figure it out. So after about 25 years, I'm serious about this. It took 2.5 decades of just listening and listening and listening, taking some notes, not private notes about individual A and quoting them, but notes about the way in which we talked about it. And I began to find out in these many, many pages, there were some similarities. And I could group certain words together. So I did that initially, and I began testing out that theory in conversations. Right. Somebody would say, let's stay on the area of empowerment. We're going to list all these 5 in just a second. They would say, you know, how are you doing today? It's a bad day for me. Bad. Why is it bad? Because I'm just pissed off. I don't even know why. What does being pissed off mean? I've had some people say, you don't know what pissed off means? And you say, you keep this up, I'm going to be pissed off at you. Okay, but what does that mean? I mean, it talks about urinating in some way and having your bladder empty. Is that what you mean? No, that's not what I mean. Stop doing that. It means I'm mad. It means I've had it. How mad are you? I am pissed off. That's how mad I am. So, mad, is the word mad more intense or less intense than pissed off?
Pissed off, right.
And what's interesting is some people would say, oh, no, if I'm pissed off, I'm on my way to mad. And other people would say, no, I get mad first. And when somebody pushes me a little too far, man, when I'm pissed off, you better watch out. And I began to realize each person had a stack. So what I'd say, so if you're annoyed, is that more intense or less intense than pissed off? Oh, annoyed. Nah, annoyed. And I've had dads say, when I'm annoyed, I'm at the top. So it's very interesting that individuals would take all these words and they had a system.
Right.
That's where I came up with the idea. Right. So I found out in our complex language structure, some people have very, very few words. Babies, young children, toddlers, they have 1 or 2 words for each area. So it's rough. I mean, these are gigantic categories. And people who have a significant background in emotion and language will have 40 or 50 or 60 different words for each one of these. But they're still stacked in a system.
Right.
So that's what we work with. All right. So let's at least lay out the 5 So
And
people have some idea what we're talking about.
And it's very important for you to, as listeners, to realize that when we come from this, we talk in those terms of psychology and what's going on. We're not clinical psychologists. We're not clinical sociologists. And we believe there's a place for that. We don't have a problem with that.
Absolutely, yes.
We don't have a problem with therapy. We're not here to poo-poo the academics of all of those kinds of things by any means. Well, we're bringing to the table our experience individually and together, which is kind of a very unique thing from the fact that we have been in a relationship for many, many years. And, and as you just heard a few minutes ago, our dialogue about how we approach things very similar, but very distinctly in how we view things, but it actually is the same ideas that's coming together that explain virtually the same thing.
Identically different. Yes.
You like that? Identically different. Isn't that a good phrase? I thought that up myself. I spent a lot of time thinking that up.
In the sense that we're identical twins that were born to different mothers, but we were both born in Washington.
Exactly.
You in the state of Washington, me in Washington, D.C. But
I know.
different mothers. And I was born 25 days earlier, which makes me 25 full days smarter with my experience of the world. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. Get your face back.
Yeah, the facilitating understanding and developing common language and putting this in, if you will, as Mike is drinking his coffee, putting it in a much more, if you will, familiar friend kind of facilitation of a pastoral type emphasis that really is helping to give you tools to start moving forward in those different areas. The 5 areas are acceptance, exposure, empowerment, depletion. Now those words may seem strange to begin with, and to be blunt, they are, as you try to get your head around what those really mean. They're significant words. They're not everyday words that we would use, and they most likely are a bit confusing in your, when you say those things. So when we talk about acceptance, we subtitle that, for better or worse concept, we subtitle that as love. Okay.
That's the system that includes love, not as a verb, but as a noun, as an emotion.
Correct.
Right.
As an emotion. We're talking about emotions here. So exposure has to do with the emotions of fear and how that comes together. So empowerment has to do with power, all right?
Anger. It has to do with anger.
Anger. And depletion has to do with sadness, all right? Right? And celebration has to do, in our context, of happy. I suppose you could put joy in there, but we used happy as being the place that fits within this. So you have acceptance, love, you have exposure, fear, you have empowerment, anger, and you have depletion, sadness, you have celebration, happy. So within each one of those 5 systems, then, we describe from low to high, if you will, intensity within that system. And we use a whole plethora, how's that for a good word today, of words that are descriptors that are emotions within that dynamic. So,
plethora is a great Greek word, simply transliterated from the Greek. You're speaking Greek right now, which means a wide variety of objects.
Yeah. So that's
when an ancient Greek talked about a plethora, it was a wide variety of objects.
So we're talking about a plethora of emotions at this point. So, all right, so why does that even matter? Michael, why does that even matter that we understand this stuff? I mean, it's all right, great, I have emotions. What?
So within the emotional system of acceptance, let's take that one for the first.
All right, we'll
I
go
didn't
for it.
want to title the emotional concept as love because some words that go into that system do not evoke the word love for most people. The word love
Right.
is seen as automatically good. It's a good feeling to have.
Right.
You want
Right.
to love. The challenge with that is love in and of itself is neither automatically good nor is it automatically bad. We're going to say that across all 5 emotional systems. Love is not automatically good in every case on everything that a person can love. An individual can love beating their children. They
Right.
can love stealing from stores and they just get a great deal of satisfaction out
Right.
of harming other people or acting unjustly, or people can love cocaine, or they can love shopping to the point that they're bankrupting themselves. The reality is that the idea of love is not automatically a good thing, nor is it automatically bad. And I wanted to come up with a system title that was as neutral as I could find to give us the ability to talk about the system and the emotions within that system as they scale or as they rise and decline based on their intensity or their passion.
Right.
When we talked about perceptions in podcast 7, the last one we did, we talked about it with a variable of sensitivity. Are you hypersensitive or hyposensitive or within the normal range on any of the senses? Now we're talking about a variable within the complex of emotions between mild or low energy to moderate energy or moderate intensity to extremely high passion or high intensity. How much energy does a person put into experiencing and resolving that emotion? So low level words, moderate level words, and high level words are what we use to describe. Now, what's interesting is when an emotion becomes impacted, difficult, it may be because it's too mild for the situation, or it's too intense for the situation. Some people have kicked back to us.
Are you kidding me? Are you still there?
There
Okay,
you go.
excuse
I'm
me.
still here. You can
Sorry.
edit that out. So some people have kicked back to us that what you're trying to do is always bring intense emotion down. You're trying to decline the intensity of emotion. When somebody gets really, really mad, really, really scared, they're terrified, you want to help them resolve that. True. But that's saying that intense emotion is automatically bad. We're not saying that. Because a person could be, let's just say it's after dark and you decide to go for a walk in the park by yourself in the dark. And you have no idea who is in that park. And you take no thought of it. Now, if a person is 7 and they say, I'm going to go for a walk in the park at 10 o'clock at night, you as a parent or an advisor or as a babysitter, you may say that is absolutely not possible for you to do. There are factors and forces you don't understand that would put you in danger. And the 7-year-old would say, oh no, I was playing in the park this afternoon. There's no danger there at all. They may get up in the middle of the night and say, I'm going to go play in the park in the moonlight because there's nothing of danger there. They can go in and they're calm, but they really are looking for a greater level of fear, of anxiety that would cause them to be overly cautious, make sure they have safe systems, absolutely be certain that they are safe. Take it out of 7. 27-year-old young woman says, I'm going to go to a bar. I'm going to park on the other side of the park because it's free. I'm going to walk through the park. I walk there every day at lunch. It's always safe. Say, I'm not telling you to be terrified, but instead of being calm or feeling absolutely unaware of your circumstances, increasing your level of caution, of suspicion, of anxiety is going to help you.
Right.
Now, at times, people say, I never walk through the park because I am absolutely terrified. There was somebody that was killed there 13 years ago. I've never walked in that park again. The terror is now interfering with your ability to function. So we want to help you resolve that level of intense feeling as opposed to merely saying, be done with it. So in the first system, acceptance, we range in intensity from wanting something or liking it, being interested, having curiosity, up to preferring something. I feel a preference. I feel a desire. I'm really connecting. There's a real strong friendship, to love and cherishing and devotion. If it gets more intense, more energy goes into it. In the area of acceptance, beyond love, above love would be bonding. It's very, very hard to walk away from bonding. You can fall out of love. The bonding is still an issue that's there. Addiction, a craving, or an obsession. Something can be so demanding of your mind, your thoughts, your experience of life and reality, that you cannot let it go. The whole area of acceptance, the first one of the 5 systems, has to do with bringing something from away into your life, having it, grasping it, bringing it in. We call this podcast gripping reality. Gripping is a word we use within the acceptance area. It was an idea out there, but bring it in, hold it, take it, love it, enjoy it, focus in on it, build some relationship with it. That's what acceptance does. So that's the first system. Let's go on to the second system.
Well, so the second system is fear, what we call as exposure, and it's the same dynamic for all 5 of these systems, is that you go from intensity, a matter of passion, to the level of extraordinary intensity that causes to drain you as a person. And that's part of what we want to help you understand, is start getting some thinking around this, being able to ask those questions. What is this doing to me? And what am I going to do about it? So if you are in a situation that is terribly unsafe emotionally, and you are up the chart, if you will, intensity, is that asking that question is a very, very, very thing that I would suggest you take the time to do as you are thinking through this. You may have never thought of it in that context. At the same time, keeping that balance of saying that when I come to these emotions, they're neutral to start with. I don't see them as being negative. People say, well, being afraid, being anxious, that's a negative thing. Okay, let's think about that for a second. If you are on a trail out here in the Great Pacific Northwest, right, and you're bumping along and you're up in the forest and you're doing all this stuff, and you come around the corner, right, and there's a mama black bear with 2 of her little black cubs, is fear a good thing or a bad thing at that point? Well, hopefully you have more than fear. Hopefully that intensity is way up this list of almost being in terror. Why is that? Because then that kicks into you what? the fight or flight syndrome. And with a black bear, you're going to lose. So you better get out of there.
Unless you run downhill. Bears cannot run downhill very well because their hind legs are longer than their front legs and they tend to roll.
Don't listen to him. He's from the
Never
Northeast.
climb a tree and never run up a hill.
They do
You're
not.
dead. You are dead.
They first off, they don't have hills. Second, I'm not even sure they have bears. So don't listen to him.
But do not take your shoes and socks off because a bear has bare feet already. And they can outrun you when you're in bare feet too.
Just realize that at this point,
okay, we're getting
exposure.
Exposure
is a good thing. Fear is
exposure is not necessarily good.
Right.
You can be anxious
Absolutely.
over something. You can be anxious over something that actually is presenting no threat to you at all. There is no actual cause for your anxiety level, your fear, your nervousness, or whatever. But you still may feel very intense anxiety.
Right.
And it's over nothing. So a young child, age 5 or 6, begins to understand the physical dimensions of a room, that there's a closet inside where a door is. A 1-year-old or a 2-year-old doesn't understand that there's another room on the other side of the door. When the door is shut, the door is just a wall. I mean, just a wall that with a handle or something brassy on it.
Right.
But when a child gets to be about 4 or 5, they can realize there's still a room inside the door. When their bed is lifted up off the floor, there's a space underneath. That occurs in a child's mind somewhere between 3 and 5, 6 years old. They begin to understand spatial dimensions. What's in the closet once you shut the door? A 1-year-old doesn't understand anything's in the closet. A 21-year-old, hopefully, understands there's just clothes and there's nothing in there. But a 4 or 5-year-old with their perception of imagination can envision a monster, something coming out underneath, something moving the closet stuff around, that there's a monster in there or underneath the bed. That's their brain beginning to grapple with reality as they understand it, and they're having an emotional response to their perception. Now, as an adult, as a parent, you have a child crying, they wet the bed, they're always getting up and coming into your room because they're scared of monsters under the bed. Let's just use that example. They're scared of monsters under the bed. They don't have a lot of words yet for exposure. They're just scared of the monster. Are you terrified? You know, are you paranoid? Are you feeling phobic? A child is going to look at you like you're from outer space and say, I don't have any idea what any of those words means. I'm just scared, mommy or daddy. I feel unsafe. The whole area of exposure is to express in emotional terms my level of feeling unsafe or unsecure. I want safety and security. That's a normal human objective. When the world around you is perceived as being unsafe or unsecure, the emotional response we have to that perception is some form of fear or anxiety. Now, if it's a legal issue or a moral issue, it's not a monster under the bed. It's something that I did that I don't want you to know about, and I hope you don't find out. The fear I may have, I'm going to use the word, I feel guilty or I feel ashamed. Guilt and shame are in the area of exposure because they have to do with feeling unsafe or insecure in a moral or a legal or a relational situation as opposed to a physical situation. So we describe fear, exposure as neutral to begin with. The question we come back to is, what do those feelings do to you? And what do you do with them?
Right.
If you say, hey, I feel totally assured, I'm very confident, I'm walking to this presentation at work, and I think this is going to be a piece of cake. I'm as calm and cool and collected as can be. And you don't realize that there are two people in that meeting whose intent is to destroy you. They are going to do everything they can actually to get you fired today. You have no idea what you're walking into. And so when you walk into the room, you could be perceived as cocky, self-assured. You're really just calm. You have no fear, no anxiety. You feel totally prepared, and you have no idea what's coming. So the feeling you have right now that you are safe and secure is actually inaccurate. And what would help you a great deal is to be aware of some of the subterfuge that's going on in your office, and that you're walking into the lion's den and you are about to get eaten. And by the end of today, you will not have a job, but you don't know that right now. Correspondingly, you could be terrified, absolutely sweating your armpits to Niagara Falls, that they're going to chew you up and tear you apart. When you come in you stumble over your words, your mouth goes dry. But the two people who hate you the most got called away on other business meetings. You sail right through. Everybody loves your presentation. Your anxiety was inaccurate. So your calmness could be inaccurate, and that's hurting you. Your anxiety could be inaccurate, and that's hurting you. Or your calmness could be an asset, and it's helping you. Or your terror is an asset, and it's helping you. Our point is, exposures is neutral. And the question is, what does it do to you? What do you do with it relative to the situation you're actually in?
Which then is a really great segue to take us into the next system. Because if we stay with this same story, the same analogy of what's going on, say you come into this this meeting, and now we're going to move to the concept of empowerment. And so you come into this meeting, you are calm because you've got this nailed. You don't know that these two people have literally set you up and are going to try and take you out. And so in that process, they are now responding, and they are proactively, if you will, I use the analogy of poking the bear. In other words, they are trying to provoke you, and they're doing a very good job at it, because now the system of empowerment, which is the system of anger, is you are moving into the dynamic of intensity and passion, and they know from previous experiences with you how to, if you will, poke the bear. What are the things that are going to get you to start moving in a direction? And you don't even realize that what you're doing is quickly moving up the level of intensity. You came in calm because you were ready to go. This was good. And all of a sudden, now you find yourself, what? In that intensity of empowerment, of anger, you are now upset. Okay, because these guys, obviously something's going on and you can't quite figure it out. And after a very short amount of time, you start what? You start getting really disgusted with them. You begin to get very angry, and that emotion starts coming out in negative comments that you're now obsessed, if you will, of, that's in the negative sense with what they're doing. And so you're distracted, which is moving you to a place that's now it's starting to cause more fear and exposure, but you're becoming more and more angry, and you're distracted to those two people. So you are actually trying to now engage with them, with the rest of the room not being engaged. And it becomes very obvious that they are, They're doing a power play, if you will, empowerment, but you are responding to that by moving up in intensity. Now you come to a place of what? You are getting sarcastic, and there's tons of sarcasm that's coming out towards these people. And as you keep moving up, what? There becomes exasperation. I mean, that's a really good picture, because now we're moving to a place of where you just, they're contemptible to you, and you're treating that way in front of everybody. And they're getting exactly what they tried to get. What did they do? They pushed you clear up this scale of empowerment intensity, because they knew that that was an area that you struggled with, and it was very easy to push you that direction by using the things they already knew.
So in that
And there
scenario, you have people playing a game. In the
Right.
meeting you're describing, they're playing a game, they're playing you.
Exactly.
There are other situations where somebody actually is becoming brutal, and you're going head to head like rams battering into each other, and the escalation of the fight is increasing. They don't even know. The person that's in opposition to you doesn't even know quite what they're doing. Our objective in teaching this material is to give an individual an awareness, the language to think in their own mind.
Exactly.
What is this doing to me?
Right.
And what am I doing with it? So you can be a step or two ahead of other people in the room.
Right.
It allows you to actually begin working through strategies of resolution. And sometimes the resolution is to enhance. You jump up into higher levels of emotional passion, or you scale down, but you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it. That becomes critical. So let's do a mid-podcast review. Acceptance is resolved. That's the language we use. The emotion is resolved by bringing something towards yourself, having it, owning it, embracing it, consuming it. You get it.
Right.
Exposure is resolved by finding safety and security.
Correct. Right. Right.
Empowerment was the hardest one for me to come up with a title for, because empowerment in the political area is an extremely positive outcome when you are dealing with oppressed people or those who have been marginalized. You want them to be empowered. And we're using it as a title for the area that includes anger. But anger to us is not automatically bad. That's one of the hardest aspects I've had in teaching these concepts, because throughout our culture, anger is seen as automatically, hands down, a bad emotion. We don't believe that. So empowerment emotions are about gaining power, bringing about change, shifting a situation so that one can win or dominate or control what is happening. If you feel things are out of control, the feeling that matches that perception is some form of anger or empowerment. When you feel it matters and it's out of control. So you have a 13-year-old. 13-year-old wants to go out with their friends. They're on their technology all day long into the night, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. They're checking email. They're on TikTok. They're doing FaceTime. They're shopping, whatever it happens to be. And your frustration level, you feel like you are not in control of your child's screen time and behavior. Their room stinks. They have food stuff that's underneath their bed that's rotting. Their clothing hasn't been put in the laundry. They haven't taken a shower in 3 weeks. We're talking probably about a boy, although it could be a girl. And your level as a parent of empowerment is increasing day by day, sometimes minute by minute. Question is, what is it doing to you, and what are you going to do with it? So there are parents who blow up. They explode. They get out the top. They are beyond exasperated. They are violent. And they take the technology, the iPad, the cell phone, they stomp on it. They crush it. They beat it on the bedpost, throw that, shattering the whole thing, throw it out. They take clothes, throw them out the window, throw them in the garbage, hit their kid, scream at the top of their lungs so that the veins in their neck pop out, all that kind of stuff, because they've lost control.
Right.
And that's what it's about. At that level. Now, the question is, how many words in the area of empowerment does the parent have to describe their own emotions?
Right.
I'm not kidding. When babies, toddlers, young children learn these words, you look at their face and they're scowling. Let's say a 3-month-old, wet diaper, haven't eaten, and their clothing is wet and clammy around their body. They don't like that. They can't think those words, but they don't like that. It feels uncomfortable. So they're crying. And then the crying becomes screaming. And the screaming becomes screeching. And then at that point, you say to your 3-month-old, "Are you mad?" And you give the word mad to match their behavior. What's wrong? Do you need to be changed? We actually start using that language. So in the area of empowerment, which your 3-month-old does not know the strategies of getting you to change your diaper or give them food, they don't even know what's going on at all. They don't have any idea. They know that they're uncomfortable and they want to be comfortable. They want change. Right. Their stomach feels empty. They want food. They want change. They want to gain that nutrition. They want to be held. They want to get up. They don't like being prone. They want to be erect. So all of those things result in crying, what appears to be anger, but it really is about communicating, I want change. I want something to happen that's not happening right now. When a parent gets to be 30 or 35 and they have a 13-year-old, who gave them the book on emotions to give them 40 new words in the area of emotion? Some parents don't have, they'll have 4 words or 5 words.
Right.
So they walk into the smelly, dirty room of their 13-year-old boy. He hasn't taken a shower in 3 weeks, even though he went in the bathroom and ran the water, so it sounded like he took a shower. But he really didn't. You can tell his hair is greasy. His teeth haven't been brushed. He smells to high heaven. He can't smell himself because his nose has shut off. You walk in and you've finally had it. So you go from, I don't like this, to, I'm pissed off about this, to, all right, I've had it, to, all right, no more, I'm blowing up. You went from, I don't like it, to, I'm pissed off, to, I've had it, to, all right, explosion. 4 steps, and you've moved all the way to the top of empowerment, and now it becomes this gigantic battle. What we're trying to teach, and this is part of the advanced level of teaching, is we have 45 words that go into the area of empowerment, and there's actually, counting slang and other kinds of words that can be put in there, 50, 60 different words that allow you discretion to go from being annoyed to being upset, or whichever one comes first, to being bothered, to being frustrated, to being angry, to being give me another word that's higher than anger.
Being sarcastic.
Sure. Feeling sarcastic. Sarcasm is a strategy of language, but feeling sarcastic or disgust
or
is an emotional word. Disdain.
Yeah,
what parent walks in to their 13-year-old boy's bedroom, which is a total trash heap, and says, I disdain this room.
Right.
I would, but no one else would. But you could walk in and say, this is disgusting.
Right.
And the kid goes, hey, I like it this way. Your child is saying, I accept this. And you're saying, we're going to change. And your child says, no, we're not. And now you have a battle.
Right.
So that's the area of empowerment. So there's
Yeah.
going to be a quiz on this at the end of this podcast. So watch your email. No, that's not really true. We have no idea who's watching this.
Actually, I think we're going to have to probably stop this one and finish the next two because we're already almost at an hour.
How fun.
And I don't think people are going to want to listen now for another 40 minutes on the next two, because that's like way too long, unless you want to keep going. But
well, you know what an intelligent person can do? Stop the podcast and watch the rest of it tomorrow.
They could do that.
They could do that. Come on. I mean, they're not a captive audience right now. Well, somebody needs to go to the bathroom, hit pause, get up, go to the. Wait a minute. We can't see you. So just take your technology into the bathroom and go.
No,
we're not going to watch.
No, don't tell me.
Stop.
No, I don't want to.
Stop. That's disgusting. All right. So what we want to do is pick up the speed so that we're not boring people to death. System 4, number 4.
Depletion. Probably the one right now that is seems to be one of the major issues across our country is this particular area of depletion, which has to do with the whole concept of sadness. And so, I think it's really that whole hopelessness falls within this category of depletion. So
Mike, just let me make one interruption here. You're trying to be very contemporary, as if somebody's watching this in 2020 with all the things that we're experiencing right now. We're on the internet. This is going to be in some supercomputer for the next 100 years. Someone could be watching this in 2035, and what we're going through right now is actually in history books.
And then they can look it up.
And still the area of depletion applies.
It still applies because they're
still
probably
applies.
Going to be,
but Mike is contemporary and I am universal.
Well, no, you're old. So
true. But by the time somebody's watching this, I could be dead.
Well, there you have it. So this whole idea of depletion has to do with that goes from feeling okay, that life is okay, and maybe from a place of, well, I'm sad because there's been loss at this point. That, again, coming back to putting some kind of stair step and understanding intensity to being hurt. So I go from I'm okay, life is calm, I'm refreshed, I'm able to function, my emotions are stable, to where now I'm sad, now I'm hurt because of the loss. And as we keep moving up with those, I'm getting more pessimistic, I'm feeling empty. Those are words that I'm feeling dejected. That's an emotion, and the emotion of dejection. Now I move to I'm drained, I'm emotionally drained, which tends to be right in the area people start saying things like I'm depressed because my emotions are drained. I have nothing left. I mean, one of the terms that people have, there's nothing left in the tank. I have nothing left to give. My tank is empty. I think that's a good picture of depletion, because what we're suggesting should happen is that you come back to a place of coming down in lesser intensity to refill your tank emotionally. That may mean that you need to do something physically to be able to get yourself renewed. Maybe you're not getting sleep. You need more sleep to be able to get your tank renewed so you can deal with your emotions. Maybe it's the relationships are really broken and rocky right now, and you need that whole issue of mending those relationships so that someone can be putting into your life. So we move from that. When we get into that area of depression, then we move more further up the ladder of that, which we have this loneliness and abandonment, and then ultimately that we come to what we say is the top of the column here is exhaustion. You're just emotionally exhausted. There's really nothing there in the tank, and I mean there's not even fumes in the tank anymore emotionally. this whole sense of numbness that I can't deal with another issue that comes my way. And here we are in 2020, that seems to be a real heavy duty pattern in so many situations with people where there's all this loss that's going on, where people are losing their ability to have, move around, their ability to interact with others. They have loved ones who have passed away from the pandemic. The loss tends to be, on this scale of depletion, it really, we see them all up and down this list in a very real way. And it's again, grabbing hold of those pieces of identifying, just like what Mike was talking about in anger, when there's like, you only have 3 or 4 words that describe your emotion in that area. What we want to help you do, as well as that we encourage you to, is take a couple of minutes, even have a discussion with your significant other or your kids or someone, and play a game and say, how many words can we use to describe? If you can use the word depression or describe sadness. What are words that we can use that, to describe sadness? And then take the time to look at those words as a person and organize them in intensity. That's not tough to do.
So
And
one of the
come
ways
back
we
to
can come up with new words is to work backwards from the
Right.
purpose of depletion. The purpose of depletion in the system, the way we think about it, is to recover or to rest or to heal. So when a person has gone through some kind of loss, could be loss of a job, could be the loss of a person who's passed away. It could be the loss of an expected future when a spouse suddenly gets terminal cancer, as you experienced with your wife.
Right.
And the intent and the desire you had to grow old together and sit in rocking chairs facing west and be 80-year-olds holding hands is going to be gone. So part of the loss that you grieve is the loss of the human being of your wife.
Right.
But part of it is the loss of that future. That's also a cause for depletion.
Exactly. It is very much so.
Very much so. So somebody loses their job suddenly. You could say that would depress anyone. The answer is not necessarily. What does it do to you? What are you going to do with it? You may be a person that hated being locked into that rat race, but you just couldn't motivate yourself to kick out of gear, step out on your own, and get out of that stupid company. They fire you. You walk out and you're actually elated. You're not depressed at all. I just lost my job. I just lost all the benefits. I lost friends, blah, blah, blah. But I feel great because you're not being depleted.
Right.
The challenge in depletion is something needs healing. You want to recover what has been lost. So at a mild level, you're tired or thirsty, get a drink. Eat some food. You're tired from the day, sleep for a couple hours, take a nap, you'll feel refreshed. But when it gets more intense and more intense, there's more energy being put into exhaustion. The reality is exhaustion requires a huge amount of energy to feel. That's why we call it a top end of this emotional system. You say, but I have no energy. It's actually requiring you to expend overdraft what you have not had available to you. So depletion as an emotional system is about recovery, rest, restoration,
and
healing.
What's really critical in this is it's about true healing. It's not about, if you will, covering it up somehow. So finding something else to take place of the woundedness or what's going on in your life. It's about facing that. And it's the part we talk about, if you want to understand really the dynamic of the reality in the center, is you have to own your own woundedness that's going on here that's causing you to move to that level. But you can't subvert that by trying to find a way to just medicate it, because that's not going to restore you to health and to heal you. So The last one is celebration, which is, is an awesome one. It's
This is our
about,
fifth system,
it's
the
our fifth
system of
system.
celebration. Mhm.
So let's walk through it again, Michael. So acceptance is about what? It's about
Drawing something towards myself, about love, about wanting, desire, connection, having it, consuming it, making it mine. It's to draw something in.
exposure is
Exposure is about safety and security, finding a way of feeling safe and secure in situations that are threatening.
empowerment.
Empowerment's about power, about change, about being able to win. It's about being able to dominate or control what's going on in my life.
And depletion.
Depletion's about restoration, healing, recovery of my resources. What has been emptied or lost, I need to refill in my life from that.
And celebration.
Celebration's about shining. It's the other direction from acceptance. It's pouring my life out. It's feeling gratitude or generosity. It's shining. It's being loud. It's having a party. It's having what is inside of me burst out in joy, in happiness, and in celebration, party. It's that kind of feeling. It's a shining out from what's been in my life.
And so the intensity of this comes from the whole aspect of being good to gladness to excitement to it can go when it comes to total intensity. It's it can become this whole thing of compulsion that I have this great sense of need that I need to shine out. I need to push it out. I have that, and I'm using the word need, I know, but that whole aspect of pushing it out, but it
ecstasy. We put
ecstasy.
The word ecstasy, something that's ecstatic, right?
Ecstasy mania right under that, which really we probably could flip those around even, is because
Good.
that becomes the driver. Just like anything is what is it doing to you and what are you going to do with it? And most people would say celebration, oh, that's a really positive thing. Being happy is a really positive thing. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. What happens when you're on the top end of this intensity with compulsion and ecstasy and mania? What can happen with that? Is that necessarily a good thing just because it's part of being happy? I mean, how would you address that?
Not necessarily. One of the things that's very interesting is we have in our culture a common expression of something is going to make me fill in the blank, make me happy. And so if I had a better job, that would make me happy, meaning I feel an emptiness. I'm struggling right now with a sense of loss in my current job. I don't feel real good about it. I feel like I'm losing my life for something that doesn't matter. And I would be happy if I had a different job. At least that's my mental framework. You get a different job, in 3 months, you're going to feel exactly about that job that you feel about the one right now.
Exactly.
Because happiness is not going to be derived by something being added into your life.
Right.
Happiness is an entirely different commodity that actually comes from within you, not externally out. So your next love relationship, your next thrilling experience, your next job that you have, more money, more whatever it happens to be, a better bicycle. I mean, it doesn't matter. The reality is that a celebration as an experience is in response to perceptions. And this prepares you for your motivations. Emotions exist without any words.
Right. So what we're doing today and what we've done today, and I know these last two we've moved along, but there's a reason why we spent significant amount of time, particularly on the first three, but particularly the exposure empowerment, because those tend to be, in many respects, the toughest for people to get their heads around and understand how that works. So when we talk about the complexes and how that works within the PEMB, perceptions, emotions, motivations, behavior. Now you're going to have some context, even though there's a lot of information. You have some context. We move to motivations in our next, in 009. We're going to talk about motivations and how does perceptions and emotions impact motivations. And so keep in mind, again, acceptance is about taking in, right?
Having, owning, receiving.
Right? Exposure is about
Safety and security.
empowerment is about
Change and power.
depletion is about
Recovery and rest and healing.
and celebration is about.
Shining and sharing and pouring out.
So you're going to see that when we get, as we pull together the other pieces of this, you're going to see these intertwining. So when you look at our logo, which are 4 heads, PEMB, and the intersect is a Venn diagram in the middle, these dynamics cross all venues and they impact each other.
They interact. There's an
They
interaction going on,
There's an
right?
interaction that's constantly going on between these 4.
So in a certain
So-
sense, people have to get through podcast 9 and 10.
Correct.
And these 4, 7, 8, 9, and 10 introduce the PEMB idea, the big idea.
Right.
And once you have that, there really is nothing else extensively that's left to learn. It's
Right.
now going deeper. But the
Right.
PEMB system, that is how we understand the human experience of reality, how you build your sense of what's real and your place in that reality. Now, with perceptions, emotions, motivations, and behaviors, you can start analyzing, unpacking, dismantling, rebuilding, restructuring. And as they interact, now we can talk about some dynamic. That's really where we're going with this. It's going to be a good journey.
And with that, you can grip reality.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
why we're giving you tools to be able to grip reality, and we're going to grip reality with you. So gripping reality is who we are. So you can find us on.
We're on YouTube right now. That's going to go to some other platforms as well. But you can always come back here. We have a website, grippingreality.com. We have, you can send email to either one of us, Mike with a Y or Mike with an I, Mike@grippingreality.com. Send in questions, other things you want us to talk about, what you want us to refine, what you want us to go over again, what you want us to beat to death so that nobody else will bother listening because we talked about it too much. Something that we forgot and have overlooked in this entire presentation that we should have covered and we didn't cover. Anything. You can write anything you want and we'll read it, and whether we do anything with it or not, who knows?
Yeah,
We might.
Who knows? We might. Okay. Hey, till next time. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it
Sure.
a lot. Have a
Good deal.
Bye.